We have to consider scene scale when we're building objects in 3D space. This goes for any application. The simple reason being is things like the physical camera or the Arnold lights and the physical light system that's built in, cloth simulations of any type or any other kinds of simulations are all based on real world size and physics. So if we just build things any old size, we might be trying to make cloth work, for instance, and suddenly realize that the object that we're building is supposed to be 3 feet tall is actually the size of the CN Tower, and our piece of cloth is the size of Toronto we're trying to wrap around it. And so all of the properties will be all askew, and it just won't make any sense whatsoever. Gravity won't look right, and none of the settings will be correct. The other thing is the 3D environment isn't infinite, believe it or not. It doesn't go on forever. The further the mathematics get away from the origin, the more error there is to it. So the error level goes up and up. And when you get far enough away from center, you end up with a situation where you can't really work anymore. So we need to set up our system unit setup. So from customize, unit setup, and with the unit setup, there is right at the top, system unit setup. This system unit setup dialog is how 3ds Max is thinking. So what is the size of the environment that we're building, in a sense, sort of the universe we're inside here in 3D space. Now, if we're building small items, centimeters would work well, but if we were building an entire city, we might want to move to kilometers. Because essentially one generic unit, okay, which is how kind of really the 3D space is thinking in these generic units, equals a kilometer. That means we can get much further away from the origin, and our mathematics isn't going to break down because we're still only, so many units away, but we're, it's thinking about them in kilometers. We could go with foot inch. We can go with millimeters if we're doing microscopic stuff or whatever else. In this case, I'm going to leave it on centimeters. So that is how 3ds Max thinks. But how we think might be different. We might want to be working with different numbers and whatnot as we're working and changing things up. By default, it's working in generic units. So if I create a box, for instance, and you can see the numbers here with the box, because Max is currently thinking in terms of one generic unit equals 1 centimeter, you could just think of these as centimeters at this point. But if we go to customize unit setup, we could even say, let's choose metric instead, and let's show me those centimeters. It'll actually tell you that these are centimeters now. And at any point in time, you can change it up. You can say, well, you know what, I'm building a small object, or was, and it was centimeters kind of worked well, but I'm building something that's much bigger now. And it's going to make more sense if I see the numbers in meters. I'm going to think in terms of meters, and then it converts all the numbers and shows you them in meters. You'll notice the box didn't change size. Nothing changed. It's just the display that it's showing you going on here. You could even go in, for instance, and use decimal inches, or against fractional inches, and you see all the foot inch type things going on here. You can even go in and say, well, I want that to be feet, fractional inches, and it becomes harder and harder to type it in with that sort of thing, I find. But I think in those terms better when I'm thinking about buildings and whatnot. So if I'm thinking about structural buildings, or even the height of a desk and a chair, the rise and run of a set of stairs, everything in North America at least is all based on foot inch when it comes to building. So I can tell you that a front door is 36 inches wide, and a bathroom door is 24 inches wide, and the height of a stair is 7 inches, and the run of the stairs is 9 inches. And that's, so it's much easier for me to think this way, but I might want to be working and have Max thinking in centimeters or meters in the background, especially if I'm dealing with clients, for instance, that are in Europe that are going to want everything in meters, or, and not foot inch. So I want to make sure that I set that up to begin with to sort of reflect the scale of the scene that I'm going to be working on. And then what I can do is I can build boxes or whatever to get going and make sure that I type in some, generalized sizes for things to think about them. So if I was going to be building something that needed to be 2 meters high, I could just start with a box and at least drop it in the scene and go, okay, it's going to be that big, and then delete the box later or make it from the box if it's appropriate anyhow. But at least gives me this, really quick starting point and understanding about how big that item needs to be.